In Alberta, it's particularly acute because, frankly, we're a petro state. And I say that not as a pejorative, it's just a fact. It's just that our economy is very dependent on oil and gas development. And it's going to be hard to transition away from that. And the analogy that I use is, if the world were transitioning away from wine, you wouldn't expect the French to be leaders in that transition. They'd look at it and say, we love wine and we produce a lot of wine. We export it to the rest of the world. So why would we lead that? It's the same for Alberta. We might call ourselves leaders, but like the French transitioning in the world, transitioning away from wine, it's against our economic interests because we have so much of our province reliant on the oil and gas industry. And, and on a national level, it's challenging because of the close to 5 million barrels of oil that Canada produces on a daily basis. 3.5 million of that comes from the oil sands, and most of that is in Alberta. We have 300,000 workers that are earning high salaries that are dependent on the oil and gas industry. And Alberta, accounts for about 25% of the country's emissions. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. And oil and gas decarbonization is expensive, especially in the oil sands. And also, it's not in our own hands to control our destiny, because we're at the beck and call of a globalized commodity product and that globalized commodity product's price. Right. So we're not a price setter. We're a price taker. So we're also dealing with very complicated global economics and geopolitics.
Yeah. And there's still a demand for I heard that with the TMX expansion, like there's already an order from one of the Chinese energy firms for a good amount of oil from that pipeline. Like it's our product is still in use. So I can understand, from an Alberta standpoint, why we would still want to support oil and gas. Do you think there's also this kind of identity that's tied into, like you talk about the French and the wine, right? Like, do you think there's identity also attached to this industry? Like generations of families have benefited from this industry, whether directly working in that industry or whether you're a community that's kind of benefited from it. I kind of wonder if people's identities are being challenged here in Alberta when they hear about we got to transition away, or maybe being framed as almost the bad guy to some extent.
Oh, Rupesh, you're bang on. You're bang on. There's and we're both from Ontario originally. And we came out here, and I don't know about you, but I was surprised. I'd understood intellectually this Alberta identity that is wrapped up in energy production and that industry. And I didn't understand it emotionally until I spent time in rural Alberta and saw, and for good reason, the pride that, in Alberta, most of the energy that Alberta produces goes elsewhere. And the oil and gas, most of it's not consumed here in Alberta, it goes elsewhere. And they can, Albertans can say, sure, we're producing energy that can help to keep houses warm, for instance, or power people's mobility around Canada and elsewhere in the world. A lot of it goes to the United States. Yep. So when you're told, oh, well, you're a problem, and that job that provides you with a 6-figure salary and allows you to send your kids to university and has been also, allowing, help to pay for the hockey barn in your community and all these benefits. To be clear, like it provides a lot of benefits to us here in Alberta and federally as well. Yeah, a lot of benefits. So the fact we have good schools, we have a good public healthcare system. You can draw a straight line between the health of those two systems and the contribution through royalties and taxes from the oil and gas industry. So people have this negative reaction, especially when they're told by people from outside the province, or as the Kenney government had suggested, they said, oh, well, Ed is doing this, which wasn't the case at all. That, well, you're bad now, and your industry needs to go away. So when they hear energy transition, they can hear transitioning me out of a job. out of a comfortable six-figure salary, and then as it's happened in communities where the industry frankly has shrunk, then you're into a five-figure salary working perhaps in the service industry, which is a
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
different proposition, both for your pride
Mm,
and, to be clear, and as a guy, I'm raising a family and having to pay for household expenses, you know, then suddenly you worry more about the bills, and then that
sure.
can compound the psychological challenge that you're facing. So I totally get it when people bristle when an environmentalist says,
Yeah.
or is purported to say, your job is bad, your industry is bad, because it can affect them in so many different ways.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think anytime you put somebody's back up against the wall, you're never going to be able to invite them into a proper conversation. And I think, I don't want to say folks on the left or people who are environmental activists who sometimes do that. I think that um, are just it's like the whole Hillary Clinton deplorables comment, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Trump supporters, you can't say that every Trump supporter is a racist or is some people are looking at their own situations. They feel compelled by whatever Trump has to offer. It doesn't mean that they're a deplorable person, right? Like sometimes I think we just cut and paste people and put them into these categories for ease sake.